All right, guys. Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Results Loading podcast hosted by Prosperous AI. Today, I'm very excited to introduce Matt Johnson. He is the Vice President of Operations at Triangle Construction Services, with over 15 years of experience in construction and business process management. Matt has built an impressive career leading operational excellence and driving efficiency, of course, in large scale projects. In this episode, we're going to dive into Matt's career journey, explore his approaches to team leadership, process optimization, and innovation within construction operations, and gain insights into what it takes to successfully manage complex construction projects. I will let Matt tell us all about that himself. Just wanted to set the table here. With all that being said, Matt, thanks so much for taking the time today. Welcome. Of course, really looking forward to this one.
Yeah, me too. Appreciate you having me.
Absolutely, man. So diving right into this and starting at the beginning here, can you walk us through your career journey a little bit at a high level, from starting as a staff accountant to now becoming VP of operations at Triangle Construction Services? Um, Walk us through this journey, if you will, and set the table for what we're about to hear a little bit more about.
Yeah, for sure. It's a pretty unorthodox journey. Got a started with accounting degree. Picked that because I knew I had a lot of options. Knew wanted to do something in business. Ended up getting a degree at USI there in Indiana, and went on to start a career at a tax firm, and quickly realized that's not what I want to do in my career. I didn't enjoy it, wasn't really thrilled by it all, didn't have a great experience. And so from there, I kind of bounced around, trying to find, did some work at the grocery store that I worked at during college to figure out what I really wanted to do in my career. And so my uncle connected me with an underground construction company in Evansville, a company called Frontier Kemper, and they were looking for accountants. They always were looking for accountants, and so I put in my resume, and my mentor ended up interviewing me and hiring me for a role there. They hired me due to the fact they just started a big project up in Canada. They needed someone to handle forex exchange. They needed someone to handle things like tax audits, things like that every month, doing processes and procedures and setting up things for this new entity. And so the job had just gotten started just before they hired me. And so I started there. It was in January of '07. Started there and I worked there for about 2 years, just working on the Canadian stuff. We started another large project, and at the same time got an opportunity to go up to Vancouver for they were changing some tax laws from a split provincial and nationwide tax to they called it HST, which is a combined tax. And so there were it was a really big change for the entire province of BC. And so we wanted to go up there, and there's a few of us, to make sure we were handling it properly and accounting for it properly. And so I went up there and did that. And that's when I met the project manager on this large project that we were working on. He said, got to talking to him about some opportunities, and he's like, "You ever thought about coming up here and working on the project?" No, I did not think
I've
about
been
ever
doing
doing that.
accounting.
Yeah, right. So I'm an accountant. I'm not a big. I mean, I worked in construction, but not on a job site ever. And so um, got to think about it. And my wife and I decided, yeah, let's take a leap. Let's try it. And so started that role in 2010, in September 2010. And so that's where I found my niche. I realized I was the guy that you throw in a fire, solve a problem, move on to the next. And from a job site perspective, and everybody knows in construction, that's all our superintendents do. That's our project managers do. It's just solving problems. And so I realized very, very quickly that I loved that. It gave me energy. It's really what I wanted to do. And so I helped manage. The first project it ended up ballooning to about a $230 million project after change orders and extra work and extensions and things like that. And so I finished that project out and then started another one on Vancouver Island. And so that was another $120+ million, $140+ million project. And worked
Nice
on
way to
those.
get your feet wet.
You
Throw you
just
right into the nine
deep
figures right
in
away.
weights around your ankles, deep in management of accounting, IT. Worked and managed the HR, which meant unions. Jumped into that, and so really relied a lot on other people with greater knowledge than me. Did a lot of trainings. We had some really great lawyers, legal teams in Canada that helped advise and mentor and train me into the way to do things properly. And so when you're in the deep end and don't know where to go, you got to rely on people who are smarter than you. I've got an old saying. I've got it on my wall. It's never be the smartest person in the room.
In
If
the
you're
room.
there,
Yep.
you're in the wrong room, right? And so you quickly learn to rely upon the folks that have the more experience than you. And so just being willing to ask questions and things like that, you just learn and glean so much information from it. So I did that until so that moved there in 2010. In 2015, into 2015 to 2016, I realized I was just ready to get back to the States. Had the decision to, whether I was going to pursue permanent residency in Canada or come back, and it was time to come back. One of my kids, as they entered middle school, to have a stable, not jump around from place to place, and so we just kind of that was the decision we were going to make, and so I started that's when the CFO who was at my old company had moved on already, and I chased him because I trusted and leaned on him. He's truly a mentor for me, and so I chased him to now EMJ, and so I started with them as a business process manager, which is a complicated way of saying, just looking at the different operations in our accounting group and trying to help folks do them better. So my initial my initial process to learn is to help our project managers and operations folks do accounting better, right? Help them learn the system, help them learn the processes, reporting every month and making sure things are accurate, things like that. And so I jumped headfirst into learning the ERP system that we had at the time and started even I was telling a coworker today, started even rewriting the manual that we had as a company. And like, man, really quickly realized that this is just incredibly complicated for guys who are just they just want to build buildings, right? Like they just want to get out there and do their job and manage subcontractors and manage our risk. And they don't want to go learn the ins and outs of accounting and things like that. And so
Well, these
with
processes that are supposed to be making our lives easier are actually creating
just
huge roadblocks and
convoluted, yeah,
elongating everything.
exactly. So especially when you think of from a perspective of an engineer or superintendent or whatever those guys are that are managing the field, like they don't want to spend all day fighting with subcontractors on schedule and quality and just different controls and then come in and go, man, my cost report's messed up. I got to go figure out how to make that look like I think it's gonna supposed to look at the end of this job. And so what we quickly realized is it makes a whole lot more sense just to hire a group of accountants that will help these folks, right? And so I, with the accounting management team, began the process of hiring a team of accountants that would then subsequently, take the place of a lot of what these project managers had to do, and not that they didn't know the profitability of the projects anymore and they were exempt from that, but just manage the idiosyncrasies of the processes so that the project managers can make a decision at a 10,000 foot level instead of a 5,000 foot level, right? That's the change order. You got to go do that. You got to get an interface, and that's the profitability of it all. And so it made their lives a million times easier so they could go manage a project properly and not have to worry about, oh man, that's out of balance. I got to go fix that before my meeting next week. I get yelled at by my boss, right?
What a concept. I mean, they're actually able to focus on what they were hired to do in the first place as opposed to deal with all this other nonsense on the side
Right,
because of
right.
some
A
weird
couple of
process.
two of my best friends I play golf with a lot. I tell them all the time, just be what you is. That's what I got it from my high school basketball coach. He was a Southern hillbilly, and be what you is. Like don't try to be something else. Don't be a guy who can go manage accounting when you can't manage accounting, right? And
You're not an
so
accountant,
go
you're a
help them
construction
focus
guy.
on, yeah. Let the main thing be the main thing for those guys. And so it was super important for and key for our company to grow, and so I did that for a few years, and our company as a whole, is now Builder Holdings is the name of it now. We have a holding company and then a couple, sub companies underneath. They got an opportunity to a strategic opportunity to really self-perform some work. We had some concrete geniuses at a project out in Texas, and it was we need somebody to manage it though. So I got with our CEO and raised my hand. I said, I'll try it. I've got that background. Everything we did on those two Canadian projects of the 220, $30 million plus, all of that was self-performed work, save for a $5 to $8 million welding contract, subcontract we had. So everything else was self-performed, and we managed, production versus time versus dollars. And so that's really the key to self-perform is you gotta look at productivity versus the dollar spent, right? And manage that according to your schedule. And it sounds simple. It's much more difficult than that, but not a whole lot of folks here had that experience. And so just raised my hand and said, I'll try it. Let's go. Jumped in head first to this triangle thing and haven't looked back. So that's kind of how I got to where I'm at. Again, unorthodox accounting guy is now leading a construction division. So it's having that experience has been paramount into really understanding the in managing the numbers. That's a big key, because it doesn't matter how well you do the project if you don't know where you're spending your money at. It's a problem. So that background has helped me immensely in my career. But glad I got out of the tax and audit world that I started in.
Matt, a lot to unpack there. Um, a lot of supply chain and operations guys I've had on the podcast end up having an engineering or accounting background.
Mm-hmm.
And I've asked them this question before. You answered it beautifully during your synopsis just now. But the accounting really gave you an advantage in the operations space within construction in terms of understanding the numbers, where can costs be saved, because that's such a big part of it, obviously, whether it's
Yeah.
construction or food or whatever, what have you industry. The accounting background, so I was going to ask you this, but you really answered at the end there. The accounting background has really given you a leg up in an industry that you didn't expect to be in. And it
Yeah.
sounds like that you've been able to really ride that wave into, this illustrious career and, as you said, unorthodox yet successful story, um, which started with accounting. And yes, we didn't expect to be here, but there was a lot of advantages and a lot of unexpected overlap that has
Mm-hmm.
kind of led to you being able to be really successful in this space.
100%. Yeah. It, I never, Chuck, who is the CFO that I followed from company to company, would tell you Matt wasn't a great accountant. Like he wasn't a great accountant. And so, he didn't mean that I wasn't good at my job. He just meant that he didn't love it. Like it wasn't what it wasn't what it gave me energy, right? But it has allowed me to do is give me a different mindset. It also has allowed me to work really closely with our VP of accounting here to really help manage revenue, help manage cost, help manage cash flow, and really help the leadership team with our holding company during strategy meetings to just say, okay, this is the direction we need to go from a cost and dollars perspective, and it helps create projections properly. Just having that mindset has created a different situation than if I would have just gone with a construction management degree or a finance degree or something like that. It gives me a different perspective for sure.
Totally. And as a VP of operations, I mean, you really connect the boots on the ground to the boardroom where the decisions are being made. And then you exist in both spaces, which gives you a leg up in terms of, okay, I know what's happening on the ground. I'm responsible for the operations, the supply chain, the procurement, the day-to-day ops, right? But also you're sitting in the boardrooms and you have the accounting background. And so I haven't heard this one before. I've heard engineers being excellent supply chain executives, but an accountant being a VP of operations, that's all. I mean, it really, and you have the receipts to speak to it. Obviously,
Yeah.
it's working well for you, and there is evidence as to why When you talk about managing revenue, managing cost, managing cash flow, managing labor, resource management, stuff like that, that's how your mind has been trained to work, but you're able to go and execute into a field that it's almost more useful based on your personality type. And so it's
For
a
sure.
win-win essentially.
Yeah, and you train the mind, but you have the personality to do something different, right? And that's really
Right.
what it's come down to. It's just perfect. You said that perfectly. And so I think a lot of it too is, I mean, one of the things we talked about and you asked about is just how do you mirror those things? How do you bring those? How did you insert yourself in an operational world when you're from a nerdy accountant world, right? Like just a totally different space. And to me, it's you just got to ask so many questions. First started on the procurement side with our plumbing, my plumbing rep, who was a close friend of our CEO. He would say, hey, got to order those discussions and get those trim valves and da da da. And I'm like, you learn so much from guys that have been in the field for just tens and tens of years. And so, it's just one of those things that just you glean that information and start applying it to what you do, and you go, oh, okay, I can connect that and things like that. And so again, I think asking questions, man, you got to find curious people. Be curious. It's such a huge aspect in life.
Totally. And I don't even know if you've noticed this, you probably have, but you mentioned something earlier, which I thought was, first of all, fantastic, but also really interesting in terms of, there was this opportunity in Texas, which eventually ended up being what you're doing now. You're the one who raised your hand. It's like, yeah, I'll give that a shot.
I
Some of
got
the
it. Yeah.
best, right? Because a lot of the guests here on the show are business leaders with similar backgrounds to you. That's who we like to talk to, of course. And a lot of them have not same, but similar stories to that. They're sitting in the room and the manager, the boss at the time or the big wig comes in and says, "Hey, who wants to sign up for like this shitty job?" And no one raises their hand except one guy.
Yeah.
And I had one guest, and I like telling this story because he said, I made a deal with myself. I'm going to take the shittiest jobs, excuse my language, for the next 2 years that nobody wants. Nobody wants those jobs. I'm going to go in and take them. I think he was like an operations manager at the time, looking to move up the chain. After 2 years, he was like a senior VP because he knew exponentially more than everybody else by
Yeah.
taking on those jobs that nobody wanted, raising his hand when no one was raising their hand. And after those 2 years, the guy knew loads more than anybody else. I've told this story a few times because I think it's great, and you kind of have a similar story. Sure, why not? I'll go check this out. It's not like something I can't handle. I don't know everything about it, but I'm going to go and learn as much as I can and go and execute and look where you are now.
Yeah. The two supers that are there that I worked with on that concrete job, that is concrete, like scientists, like gurus, right?
Yeah,
Not people. You don't want to put them in a board, like you talked about, a boardroom or a meeting with,
sure.
but man, you go out there and talk to them about concrete, and they'll talk your ear off. They knew more about concrete than anybody, those two, than anybody had ever met. And so really bringing, and I think they learned a lot from me in retrospect about how to manage, about looking at costs, how to create change orders, how to manage dollars and cents from that perspective. So you get in the room and it's get combined efforts, and it makes it makes a very successful situation. And so yeah, you don't nothing ventured, nothing gained, right? So I tell people all the time, I'll bet on myself all day, right? Like
I'll
it's just
bet.
one of those things that I don't like to bet on things I can't control. Sports betting is a new big thing, and I'll dabble in it a little bit, but it's just one of those, like, it's really frustrating to lose at that because I can't go make a decision to go help control that. It's like you throw money out there and it is what it is. And so I don't enjoy. I'll bet on myself in golf and things like that. But it's like betting on yourself when you can't control it is hard. But when you can control it, I'll bet on myself all day. And it's worth it.
It's an important attitude to have because if you
For
don't
sure.
have that attitude and you're not willing to go and even fail, like you have to be willing to fail, almost look to fail in a way. I think about this a lot myself. if you don't fail, and I know this is a little cliche, but if you're not failing, or I guess what that means is attempting something new or something you don't know as much about,
Yeah,
then going and not succeeding, what are you learning? If you're only
that's right.
focusing on stuff that you're good at or that you already know how to do, that just sounds like a recipe for stagnation for forever, I guess you
Yeah.
could say. So you have to have that Matt Johnson attitude, if you will, just willing to bet on myself, win or lose. At least I'm going to come out with something, and it's going to be a life. It's going to be a lesson, whether it be in life, professional world, either way. But you kind of have to have that mentality in order to grow. It seems like.
Yeah, my big thing is I don't always win, but I never lose, right? Like you don't always win, but you'll learn something, right? You're always gonna,
Exactly.
not every project's a winner, not every situation is a winning situation. Sometimes you gotta eat crow and go, I got it's on me, I got it, I'll go fix it, I won't do it again. I've had this situation with the people that work for me. It's like they'll come in hat in hand, I messed this up. Okay, I bet you won't do it again. You know what I
Guaranteed.
mean? Like once you realize, oh, I got to do this and I got to check that box and I get this box, it's like, yeah, but I bet you won't do it again. And in most cases I haven't, because hey, I'm double checking this and I'm looking at this and I'm verifying that. Mistakes happen. But like you said, if you're not putting yourself out there, you're never going to know what else you can do. You're never going to see those possibilities. You're never going to see what if, right? And so I've always take the call, uh, take the leap. Whatever cliche phrase you want to say, it's you
Yeah.
always try to put yourself out there in case something happens. You never know. You never know.
Yeah. Well, then that just to your point, then we can move on to something else here. But to your point about I may never win, but definitely never ever
Yeah.
lose. I mean, it goes hand in hand. Because
Right.
again, if I'm sitting here doing stuff that I've been able to do well for 10 years, and it's like there's nothing wrong with that, but you don't, there's a ceiling. There's a ceiling for everything. So you have
That's
to,
right.
it's your responsibility to go out and elevate your ceilings when you can, whether it's a successful endeavor or not. So,
Yep.
great example right there. I love that. I agree with it entirely. And a walking, talking example with you here, kind of describing that, and look what happened to you, and look
Yeah.
where you're sitting.
I tell people all the time, a lot of it's just dumb luck. Like just in life, yes, you make your own chances, right? Like you do really create your own luck in some instances, but sometimes it's just dumb luck. Like if
Sure.
I moved to Canada and those jobs just failed immensely, maybe somebody wouldn't have trusted me to go do the next one. And Chuck might not have called me to come to EMJ. Some of it's just dumb luck.
Yeah.
But the more you put yourself out there, the more opportunities you give yourself, the better the odds are that one of them's going to hit for sure.
Dumb luck, and then a little bit of grit and determination, and being
100%.
okay with getting kicked in the jaw every once in a while, and you'll be right on your way.
Not everything is easy, man, for sure. The
Tell me about
transitions,
it.
those are the hard parts, right? The transition, once you get settled, it's like, all right, now what? Let's go.
Yeah.
Um, it's good. It's good.
That makes a lot of sense, and I think that can relate to a lot of people out there who will be listening. Curious if you don't mind a small pivot in the conversation here.
Yeah.
What were some of the biggest challenges you faced transitioning from the financial roles, the accounting, into broader operational positions? I know obviously we discussed this a little bit. You're an accountant, all of a sudden you're working construction, you've done some home renos. That's about it. What
Yeah.
about other challenges that you face, maybe in the day to day, fitting in with the culture, getting with the processes? Let's dive a little bit deeper into that if we can.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, obviously, uh, when diving through some of the questions, like just thinking about the process, it's like, man, it was hard. It was like harder than I remember. I remember I moved when I made the decision to go to Canada. I moved up by myself so my wife could finish her semester. She was working as a social worker in the school system, and kids wanted to finish, give a few months, let me find a place, it's just easier process. And so I get there on a Monday, the Tuesday morning safety meeting, and I walk in there, and I mean it's just rugged, just fluorescent orange safety clad, it's all this safety gear, hard hats, and I'm over there and like my khakis and my polo with my dress shoes on, right? And so immediately I stick out. I'm going, all right, number one, I need to look like them, right? Like don't walk in dress shoes and slacks and
Like the pretty city boy. Yeah.
yeah, who's the schmuck in here trying to
Yeah.
pretend he's a construction guy? So, that was really quickly you figure out how you stand out. And so, just listening to the conversations and understanding the words that they're using. I mean, it's a tough transition, right? It was just so much, it was just so drastically different from the debits and credits that I was working on in the home office. And so, really, a lot of it was just listening a lot. And my personality is not listen, it's do, it's go, it's I have this opinion, do this. But you don't know what you don't know, right? And so providing some insight and providing some observations are okay. Speaking up and saying, "Hey, what about this? Have you thought about that?" That's okay. But really, in a room full of folks who knew way more than me about the subject matter, I just had to listen a lot, and that was a tough transition as well. And so, really thinking about that, and then again, we talked about it earlier, just asking questions, man, learning. People can figure out. I mean, everybody knew I was the city kid who was coming up from an accounting group trying to put some rules and regulations and things like that, and mandates of this is how we're going to do accounting. Well, no, but really trying to um figure out how to help them, right? They don't know what they don't know about accounting too, right? And so being that liaison between those ops folks and the accounting folks in the home office, once I figured out, okay, they just need equipment, material, people, whatever those assets, whatever those things are that they need them as quickly as possible so that they can make good decisions and correct decisions to keep the project moving. That's it. That's all they cared about. Whatever that was, whatever that resource was that they were needing, time, people, whatever, they needed that as quickly as possible so that they can, in a reasonable time, I should say, is really the right word, a reasonable time, so they could go keep the project moving. And anybody who got in their way was a problem, right? I quickly figured out that in operations, that's what they care about. And so if you can go solve those problems, right, and solve those things for them while also keeping the accountants happy with, okay, I got an invoice and I'm accounting for it, and that person's going to get paid on time, and I've got these information, all this information, the cost code is set up properly, all these things, I'm going to be able to budget for that, and there's a change order associated. The mirroring or being that liaison, I should say, between that, I figured out was a niche, was something that I could go do because I cared about the ops. I loved it. Got it from my dad. My dad was in operations. He was a blue collar guy. Um, so I had it. I didn't know I had it, but I had it back there. But just with the degree, right? And so I think that was probably the biggest, is figuring out what they need, but also making the people over here happy or keep them happy, because they'll quickly say no. That right. That's the moniker of accountants, is I just say no all the time. Well, they say no because there's a reason, right? There's
Because the
controls and
numbers
there's
say they
reasons.
have to.
That's right. Yeah,
That's it.
sometimes you got to say no. You can't do that. You don't have the cash, or you don't have the profits in the job. Is that we got to stop, right? So there's a reason behind it. But if it's a situation where um you can say, hey, I've looked at this, I've looked at this, I've looked at this. I need to get Tom the forklift so he can start that change order work tomorrow, or we're going to cause a delay on the project at $1,000 a day, whatever those things are, right? So if you have that information, accountants will go, okay, that makes sense, right? Stereotypical accountants.
Justification. Yeah. They
That's
want
right,
they want
right.
it
There's a
justified.
reason, right?
Yeah.
There's not just because they want to, because they don't want to do the hard thing. They just need to do it now, right? So yeah, it's so again, it goes back to the idea of solving problems and being that person that kind of just jumps in and goes, I got you over here, I got you over here. We're going to bring that together. And we're big on strength finders here, and at any the Builder Holdings is the name of the company. We're really big on figuring out who's person's strengths and what they're good at, and one of I'm good at bringing people together, figuring out who's going to come together to solve the problem in the most efficient way possible. And so uh, the strengths finder test just told me what I already knew, what I had figured out over the last since 2010 when I had
Yeah,
really
15 years.
started in construction. It is that it's like, oh yeah, that makes a ton of sense. I'm really good at that. And so it was a process that took me a while to go figure out, but once I did, I was like, there it is. That's what I need to go do, you know.
So it's kind of like the perfect storm, right? Because you got there and it's like, hey, no more slacks, no more dress shoes. Like that's not going to resonate with the culture here, right?
That's
Which is
right.
obviously what you're trying to do. You're the people guy, so you don't want to come in acting like, even though obviously on the totem pole, which speaks for itself, we don't want to come in acting like we said, pretty city boy with his slacks and all that. That doesn't resonate in that environment. Okay, fine. But then we need to figure out how are we going to be better at listening and like listening to how people talk, how people work, how people operate in this industry, given I've been sitting in the office and all of a sudden I'm literally in construction.
That's what I worked 6 days a week on the job site. The trailer I worked in was on the job site. Like, stark difference between in the office, in my cubicle, and hey, maybe twice a year we go check out a job site, right? Like, this is a
Maybe.
complete opposite.
You never know with you accountants, man. I hear about it all the time at home from, like I said, my fiance. You never know what you're going to get with those accountants and the
Yeah,
personality types. It could be
that's right.
it could be anything. There's a wide range, obviously.
Yeah.
So you end up there, okay, we're figuring out the listening, we're figuring out the culture, but then all of a sudden things start to come together. A few months go by, you're the people guy. So you bring people together and you can leverage the accounting knowledge you have and the people building and the team building and the people skills. It ends up being this, I guess you could call it marvelous storm of kind of an operations overhaul that's kind of led to this point in terms of, efficiency and managing the cash and managing the revenue and managing the margin and managing the team and creating this great culture and getting stuff done, with purpose. All of a sudden, this is like exactly where you're supposed to be the whole time. It's like a perfect storm.
Yeah.
Is I
Yeah.
kind of
No,
is
for
kind of what I
sure.
think I'm trying to say.
Yeah, it really was. And obviously, I didn't know that at the time, right? I had no
No, how
clue.
could you?
Yeah, it was like, hey, that sounds cool. That sounds like an
Sure.
adventure. Honestly, honestly, it was. I believe in a greater power, and it was an opportunity to allow my wife to stay home with my kids, because that same week we had at the same time had our person who was watching our kids for free said, hey, I'm going to have a kid, and so I can't really watch your kid going forward, and watch my son. And so I was like, well, shoot, now what are we going to do? We were young, and we didn't have a ton of money in the bank, and we're trying, making ends meet and doing all these things. And it's like, and then all of a sudden this opportunity posted up, and it's like, yeah, well, she gets to stay home, right? She can stay home with him, and that solves that problem. I know it's difficult and it's going to be hard, but it sounds awesome and it sounds exciting. It's like, so it was a leap. Did I know that it was going to be the perfect situation? Absolutely not. Like, there's no, hindsight looking, yeah, for sure. I was just like, oh, that's exactly what I needed to be doing in my life. But like at the time, it was like, no, it's really damn scary, right? Like, it's really scary.
Yeah.
I lived 27 years of my life in basically 150-mile radius. I went to college and, the same kind of area. And it's like, oh, let's move 2,000 miles to a city of 2.5 million people when I grew up in a town of 6,000, right? Like, different world, right? So it did an absolute not. There's no way I knew at the time, but man, it was awesome to see it all come together, and it was awesome.
Well, you need a crystal ball, man. Make some of these decisions a little easier, and that way those leaps of faith aren't as scary. I mean, I could sure use one myself right
Yeah,
now too.
I'm working on that on the side. That's my side hustle.
Okay.
How to
Yeah.
predict the future. Yeah, it'd be
If you could
perfect.
get that going, I think that'd be huge for
Yeah,
a
that
lot
and
of
time
people.
travel. We're doing that one too.
Be
Um,
interested in that, checking out like maybe,
yeah,
the
working on it.
20s,
Working
roaring
on it.
20s. Yeah. Well, I guess with that being said, we jump over to technology a little bit with
Yeah,
what Matt's working on in terms of time travel and predicting
yeah.
the future. I guess predicting the future and time travel are pretty much the same thing. But so You've been doing this for a long time. You've seen a lot of innovation, especially during the timeline that you've worked in between, I think you said 2007 and now. A lot
Yeah.
of technological innovation happening, I would imagine, both in the accounting and I know for a fact construction world. In your mind, how has technology influenced the way that you're managing construction operations now? Are there any tools or platforms that you think are really acting as a game changer in the construction operations space today? I know for a fact that, like, for example, in supply chain, the onslaught of artificial intelligence, of course, we've heard it a trillion times, is really, really changing the way we approach supply chain in procurement, just given all the raw materials, components, commodities, stuff like that. But in your mind, how is technology influencing the way operations are being conducted, especially in the construction space?
Yeah, I mean, you're crazy not to embrace technology, right? We've kind of decided as a company we're not going to ever be on the cutting edge, right? We don't want to. We're not the ones that are going to try it out.
And lead that,
Yeah,
yeah,
we're gonna look to others to go, hey man, that sounds great. You should try that. And I'm kind of on board with that. I love technology. I'm a technology nerd at home. I got all the cool things, and but from an industry perspective, you got to be careful, right? Because change for the sake of change is dangerous and can be very costly, right?
yes,
And so um, uh, there are the buzzword right now is AI. How can
totally.
AI help us, right? And so there's a reality to that in construction that I can absolutely see in the near future being, anywhere from takeoffs, right? Looking at a set of drawings, and using it to help take off material counts and quantities as far as loads and distances and amounts you got to order and from that perspective or contract review. Holy cow, that could you could change the game for for internal legal teams and external legal teams. Contract review and those. Hey, what's missing? What are we asking? Is this included? Is that not included? They'll do it in the other day we were talking about
Seconds.
expansion. Yeah, it's done in seconds. We're talking about expansion. I'm like, okay, the next company we need to do is this, and hey, write me a business plan for that. AI
Right.
did it in Chat GPT in 5 seconds. One, two, three, four, had a whole business plan. Obviously, I can't go to my boss or CEO and say, "Hey, here it is." You got to tweak it. You got to look at it. You got to
That's what's
go
getting
through
everyone
and
in trouble these days.
yeah, you got to go. You got to go make sure you're troubleshooting that. But the sheer fact that you're not spending 5 hours writing it, you're just spending a half an hour or an hour or whatever tweaking it is
Writing the
incredible.
prompt, making the
Yeah,
prompt really good, so the output's
exactly right. So
even
then,
better.
okay, you look at it and go, okay, tweak it this way. Okay, then you change your prompt a little bit and you go, holy cow. Okay, I just needed 10 minutes to go review this and kind of edit it or you take it to you're taking it to a committee, right? Like, oh, we got to make a decision, to go to committee um, proposal. Okay, it's
Yeah.
going there anyway. It's going to get reviewed 9 times. Well, let's take the simple one I spent 12 seconds on, go there and see how they want to tweak it. And so the ability to save that time or email prompts, right? So from an HR perspective, right, using AI to, hey, I have to dismiss this person for this reason. Write me a letter, right? So you're not pigeonholing yourself and you're covering all your bases. And you know, from a HR perspective, it's scary how good it is. Like it's scary. Like it's unbelievable how good it is that you can go protect yourself as a company using AI. I mean, it's also scary in other ways. That's for the sci-fi world to tell us later, right? So, but
Yeah, yeah.
from an efficiency perspective, there are so many ways to go do that. I mean, that's the big one. I mean, you have all these systems now that you can use to go collaborate. Subcontractor to owner to GC from a GC perspective. You have all these systems, and they're innovating those daily and being able to overlay drawings when those get released. And so then a subcontractor logs into the system and they got the most recent set of drawings and go, oh man, I missed that hose bib right there. I got to go put that in instead of covering the wall up and then going, oh crap, now I got to tear the wall out and whatever those things are. And so being able to get information to your project teams quickly is the name of the game. And if you can find a system that will help do that, that's going to be a big, big deal. And there's all kinds of them out there now. You just got to figure out what's best for you.
For
But
you and your
yeah,
pain points, yeah.
exactly. Yeah, what cost versus benefit versus whatever those things are, right? There's so many. I don't want to advertise them all because there's just a lot, right? But there's a lot out there that you can go do. But being able to have that collaborative environment with your client, with your customer, your client, however you want to say it, it is massively huge because keeping everything on a spreadsheet or a server or a email, like that's the old way. That's it.
It
And
is the old
it's all
way. And
electronic. You're like, that's not old. I don't have a paper file back here. It's no, keeping it in email is now the old way to do it. Go putting out in the cloud, and so everybody has access to it, and you can collaborate and can see it at the same time. That's the new model, and so the ability to access information as quickly as possible is going to be paramount as we continue to move forward as an industry. I mean, construction industry isn't cutting edge, right? Like they have some cool stuff out there, but putting putting mason block on top of each other, it's still building, right? Like it's still building. It's not, there's going to be faster ways to do it, more efficient ways to do it, but uh, it's still building, and you still got to
right.
have hands, and you still got to have people. But technology is it's going to change the way we collaborate and get information back and forth. I think that's the biggest key is figuring out how to make sure you get the info in the decision makers' hands as quickly as possible, whether from a leadership perspective or an operations perspective.
Totally. No, and I think you're right. I mean, the construction industry traditionally is not cutting edge, especially when it comes to technology. And I think you'd agree roughly 5-ish to 10 years behind technologically. Some would argue that's for a reason. We've been a successful construction company since 1920. We've done it all without AI. Why the heck do we need to use it now when we make billions of dollars a year kind of thing? But I think you're right. I mean, it's more of an optimization opportunity. Things are going well. We're always trying to fine tune, and we're doing that for a few reasons. Number one, if we don't, our competitors inevitably will, and then
Yep.
we will fall behind because whether you like it or not, the technology available now that is specifically geared towards, say, an industry like construction, for example, or supply chain or whatever you want to discuss is going to optimize these processes. It's just the fact of the matter. And so I see a lot of resistance these days in technology and artificial intelligence conversations with that point exactly. Oh, we've been doing business this way for 70 years. We've done billions of dollars in revenue. We're good. And that's fine. And I don't disagree with any of that. But to your point, there are opportunities to optimize. There's opportunities to enhance the way we're collaborating, opportunities to enhance the way we're getting information to decision makers. And by the way, unfortunately, if you don't, someone else will adopt the new
That's right.
technology, just like people went from on-prem servers to the cloud. Now we're kind of going to this AI route. If you don't do it, someone else will, and they're going to have the upper hand, unfortunately, when it comes to some of those processes.
Yeah. Yeah. Our CEO says all the time, whoever can control the labor market will win. Right. And so in a diminishing labor market, you have to figure out ways to be as efficient as you were with less people, you know, um, right, wrong, or indifferent. The labor market, particularly in construction, is diminishing. Right. The younger generations don't see construction as a career. They don't think it's an asset as much. It's just statistics say that, right, wrong, or indifferent. Statistics say that, and so you got to figure out how to be more efficient with less people because the market bears it. You have to.
I'm glad you brought that up because a few of my guests in the last couple months, honestly, this year, some of the episodes have brought up the exact same thing, specifically pertaining to the younger generation and having a rough time with how green they are and the unwillingness to go through the through the motions, through the steps, um, that are in line with what traditional construction individuals have
Mhm.
had to go through. They
Yeah.
want to come in, and this is what I'm just hearing. They want to come in and they want the salary of the directors, and they have no experience, and they don't want to
Mhm.
do the 50, 60, 75 hour weeks. Is that something that you're seeing as well? Because this is seemingly starting to seem like a pattern more and more today, in terms of conversations I've had on this podcast specifically, actually.
Broadly, yes. Yeah, I mean
Interesting. I wonder why.
broadly, yes. I mean, there's some of that, for lack of a better term, get off my lawn mentality in some of it, right? Like I had to do this and I had to do that, and why do they get this when I had to go through X, Y, and Z, right?
So
So
there's
there's
blame
some.
on both sides then.
That's right. That's and
Okay.
whether it's blame, understanding, whatever it is,
Sure. Whatever you want to
there's an
call it.
aspect. Yeah, yeah, whatever you want to call it, right? And so there's an aspect of it that's like, yeah, but that's not what the market bears, right? Like the truth of the matter is, it's like you go ask somebody, oh yeah, an engineer straight out of college makes $85,000, whatever the number is, right? I didn't make that till my 10th year. Well, that's not the way the market is anymore. And
Yeah. What
so
do they say?
if
A
we,
hundred grand is the new like 60 or whatever.
yeah, and so if you don't stay up with the times, you're not going to get the people. And if you can't get the people, I can't build anything, right? Like you have to have people to do this, regardless of how technology. We're not building a bunch of robots that are building buildings, right? There's still a bunch of men and women out there who are getting their hands dirty, putting a building up, right? And so you got to go pay them well, treat them well, and give them an opportunity to go do the best work they can. And if you can't do that as a company, you're not going to be in business in 10 years because the market doesn't bear it. And so to short answer, yes, right? Like there's a struggle with the younger generations of, yeah, I don't really I like my personal time. I like my time off. I don't want to work 60 hours a week. I don't need to work 60 hours a week. I've got this and this I want to go do. And okay, that's fine. But we got to go figure out a way, if that's truly what the market is, we got to go figure out a way to adapt to that, right? And
You have no choice.
you
You don't
don't
get
have a
to decide. The
choice,
market
right? You've got
decides,
to
and you have to adapt. Right.
for lack of a better term, control. You have to control labor, right? And not just boots on the ground labor, but your field engineers and your project engineers in the office and your project managers. Like the times of guys having 10 jobs and killing themselves until midnight working, on dealing with owners and bad situations. Like that's probably ran its course, and it's probably not a reality anymore. But is that what's wrong with that, right? What what's
No
wrong
one
with
enjoyed it.
guys and gals having a life, from that perspective, you better be doing quality work, right? We still
Of
expect
course.
quality work for the time that you're here, and we'll pay you well to do it. But if you're but the times of being able to get a hold of somebody at all hours of the night and doing this and doing that, like it's probably not that way anymore. And quite frankly, that's okay. As a father of a kid who's 17, you know, he's not too far away from the working field, right? He's not too, he works, but from having a career and not being my son. And it's like, I don't want my son to die of a heart attack at 45 years old because he's being beaten up by his boss every night, right? Like I
Yeah.
want him to have a life and enjoy life too. So I, I probably, I mean, I'm early 40s. I'm not a really seasoned person, but I have some experience, and I mean, in the end, it's okay as long as when those folks are here that they don't want to work on the weekends and things like that. As long as they're here, they're doing great work. Yeah, let's go. Let's pay you well for doing a great job. Because that's the way we're going to succeed is having great people doing great work for the time that they're here. So
Yeah. What more could you ask for?
exactly right. So I probably don't fall under that older of that older, typically, stereotypically older generation that's like, well, they shouldn't get what they get that young. That's not fair. That's not what I had to do. Um, it's not what the market bears.
Well,
So you got to follow what the market is.
which I'm concerned is leading to a lack of mentorship as well. And that's not just my philosophy. This conversations I've had
Yeah.
here and on the side as well. With that same attitude, like you said, the get off my lawn attitude, if you will.
Mhm.
It almost is suggesting that it's like, okay, these young kids, they're asking for too much. They didn't have to go through what I had to go through. They're super green. By the time I was their age, I'd worked, a few thousand hours on job sites, whatever.
Mhm.
Now there's like resistance to mentor. All of those guys had mentors, as you and
Yeah,
I discussed as well,
for sure. Yeah.
which is also a problem because it's not going to help those kids get any less green if no one's willing to kind of pick up some slack and help them out with anything.
Yeah, that's a real problem. I mean, experience on a job site, or just in any field in general. My brother, I think it was, I don't know if it was in 23. Um, he worked for a press company. He works for their parent company now, this massive steel press company. And I think it was in 2023. Yeah, they had, I think it was three guys retire, all had 40 plus years of experience in that building. And I'm like, I told my brother, I'm like, you need to stop like that day, like when you, because they're having this celebration, because they're all retiring on the same day. I don't remember if it was the end of the year, like September, whatever. They're all retiring on the same day. They all came in together. They're all retiring together. It was a really cool little moment. I told my brother, you got to stop and you got to warn everybody, not ominously, but warn everybody that 120 years of experience is walking out
Is
the door.
gone.
It's
That's
gone, right?
huge. Yeah.
And it's a big deal. And so you got all these supers that, particularly superintendents. We got a gentleman here in the office who's been in the industry for 40 years. Like, you know what you can learn from that guy, and so you have these folks in the field that have so much, particularly in the field, so much experience that are going to be leaving the industry in a few years, and it's like, okay, how do you replace that? So I mean,
Yeah.
Chattanooga's got a construction career center that our company is heavily involved in, and we got some other companies and they're involved in it to try to bring up and give knowledge to those as kids come out of, because college isn't for everybody. Like, that's a reality. Like, my generation, I think, in my opinion, was the first kind of generation where, like, you should go to college. You should go to college. College is what you need to do. College is what you need to do. Okay. Hey, it worked out for me, but I know multiple people who are my age that went to college and are not even working anything in their degree, right? So it doesn't work for everybody. Not everybody loves it. Not everybody loves school. It's not made for everybody. And so trying to get out there that there are more options in the world than just go get a degree, then get a job you hate, and sit behind a desk and be miserable so that you can go home and just watch Netflix and eat popcorn, right? Like, how about finding something you want to do? Hey, do you want to be out? Do you like being outside? Do you like working with your hands? I can teach you how to go be construction. You can make a great living.
Could
A
be for
great
you.
living.
Yep.
Yeah, I get great. You can make a great living being in construction, and people don't. It's not really advertised. It's advertised. Oh, I got to work out in the snow and the sleet and the hail and da 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 da. Yeah, maybe for a while, but I told my son, I was like, hey, if you don't want to go to college, let's have a conversation. Do you want to start a business? Hey, go. And we don't do this as a company, but you know how HVAC companies, that it's a great industry for guys to just jump in, go get your hands dirty, learn the
Yeah.
field,
Learn
and then,
something through hands-on processes. Yeah.
yeah,
It's huge. Way
and
better than
then
sitting at school if it's not your thing.
it's not your thing. Go
Yeah.
learn that process, or plumbing or electrical. Go be an apprentice for one of these guys that know how to wire an entire building, and then, okay, but you don't want to do that for the rest of your life. Well, then go start a business and then hire people to do that,
Go
right?
do it.
So
Yeah.
that process of, hey, just because you don't want to work in a hard, hands-on, day after day in the dirt for the rest of your life, it doesn't mean you have to. It doesn't mean you go to school and get a degree that you're never going to use. There's a balance there, right? Go learn the industry, understand it, so then you can go teach and train and hire folks to do it and start a business. That to me is also a great way to earn a living. I know some of the wealthiest people I know are business owners, right? That have come up from that and started something and just it's blown up. Again, dumb luck and adventure, right? Like dumb luck and going, I'll try it,
Yeah. Why not me?
yeah. So it's going to be you're not wrong in saying there's a true struggle with the mentorship, whether it's from personality or just sheer lack of people, right? Like I have a bunch of green guys on my side. I don't have time to go teach and train you. I just got this done because we don't have time to learn. We just got to do. There's all kinds of aspects of why a lot of that information isn't being passed down, but um, it's a real thing, and I don't know that I have a solution for it or an answer. I don't even know if I answered your question right, but it truly is. As we transition over the next 10 to 15 years, or even less than that, maybe five, there's a lot of experience going to leave our industry, and we got to figure out how to replace it. So
And fast. Yeah.
yeah,
And arguably, I mean, technology may or may not play a role in that process as well in terms of
yeah.
ingesting
Who
some of
knows,
that.
right? Like
Yeah.
we've got a got a really innovative vice president of construction in our Dallas office who has has dove into AI to make training videos, and not,
Sure.
hey, this is how to put mason block together, but hey, this is maybe a JHA or a hot work permit or a this or a that, to go make sure we got a 2 minute. It took him, I don't know, whatever, 5 minutes to go help create this video, and then built it from there. And it's like, okay, I've got a video to go make sure we do the right thing and not the wrong thing,
Right.
which is, something that a super would pass along, hey, we got to stop and we got to do this hot work permit, or we got to lock out and tag out, or whatever those things are, to make sure we're not putting ourselves at risk or of another person in harm's way. You know, our vice president of construction down there is creating videos like that, right? Training videos to go, that he may begin to put, more information out there for our site teams to go have, hey, look at this, watch this video really quick. It helps you fill out the paperwork. Who knows where else he's going to take it, but he's already started with some stuff. And um, that may be a way AI in the future can go past some of that information along. There's some things you just intrinsically have to figure out. Like, you just have to know that I got to do that or else, and
Totally.
so those are the types of things like crap. Like, how are we gonna make sure that next group of superintendents and leaders in the field get that information? That'll be hard. That'll be difficult, but I think we'll get there. I think it'll be okay. Things like you said, the Career Center here in Chattanooga are doing those types of things, to help pass that information along. And so hopefully that continues to be a trend in the industry, that we have places for people to go, yeah, I want to try construction. That sounds okay.
Yeah. As you said, it's a great living and you learn
Yeah,
invaluable skills along the way,
that's right.
obviously,
That's right.
as you know. Matt, I think that's fantastic. And I just want to leave you with one last question here to kind of tie everything back together. What advice, and I know a little cliche, but what advice would you give to young professionals looking to grow their career in construction or operations management? We have heard a ton today from you, invaluable insights, and commentary about how things are going today in the industry, what's led to some success for you, taking leaps of faith, saying yes, never losing, et cetera, et cetera. What advice are you going to give to a kid who maybe we're just describing and just previously just now, who's looking to follow a similar career path to you that maybe we haven't already covered today? I know that's a loaded question. We
Yeah,
touched
that's
on a
it's hard.
lot.
Like, that's
We
a tough
touched on a
one.
lot.
I mean, it's just there's a certain aspect of raising your hand and going, okay, I'll do that because somebody asked me. But there's another opportunity of, like, going to search it out, like finding that opportunity that isn't right in front of your face, right?
Yeah.
Um, I tell people all the time, and I said it earlier, so always take the call, right? Like, even people who work for me, I was like, if you ever get a call for another job opportunity, take the call.
Yeah. See
You
what
may
they have
not
to say.
you may go, that's not for me, but take the call, right? Like,
At least
always
you
take the
know.
call.
Yeah.
I will try like crazy to keep you, if but always take the call. It's about, you know to me, you got to look at what's in your best interest as a person, because I mean, the companies in general, are going to do what's best for their people because they got to keep them, right? But you also got to look for opportunities on your own and put yourself out there and see what other opportunities you have. I love what I'm doing. I absolutely love what I'm doing. I love who I work for. It's a great company. It's a great group of leaders that I get to just work alongside every day. Um, but that doesn't mean it'll always be that way, right?
Right.
A great opportunity may come up tomorrow, and I got to go to my boss and say, "Sorry, Jack, I,
Yeah.
I can't pass this up."
That you have to
Um,
consider no matter what. Yeah.
yeah, for sure. But that's not going to be anytime soon. I love what I'm doing. I mean, I love to come in and help people do their best work every day. Um, I, I don't. Man, I don't know what other else advice I could give other than, like I said it before, bet on yourself. Like that to me
The only way.
is figure out what you're good at and just continue to uh, try and learn new things. Always learn. Yeah, I don't know that I could say any more than what I've said already. I've repeated it over and over again. I think almost meandering through it back again, but um, only you know what you want to do and what you're best at. Other people may tell you, but I could have been a really good debits and credits accountant sitting in my office and doing somebody's taxes or filling out audit forms. I could have been really good at that skill wise, but did it fill my cup? Did every day would I have been able to say, I love my job? I don't know. I doubt it though, right? Like I doubt it. Knowing where I'm at now and what I'm doing now, I don't think I would have loved it, right? And I took a chance and it worked. That doesn't happen with everybody, that doesn't happen
The,
in
the
every
leap of faith
instance.
strikes again, man.
Yeah,
You
right.
got to take
So
it.
yeah, so you go, crap, that didn't work. I'm gonna try this now. Like, or I'm gonna go back to what I was doing. I tell my son, okay, either get a job doing what you love, right? And what is it? It was a Bill Gates that said, get a job doing what you love, and you'll never work a day in your life, right?
Right.
I think it was him that said it. May have been somebody else, but you'll never work a day in your life. Okay, not 99.8% of the world isn't like that, right? They have a job, or get a job so that you can go do what you love in your spare time, right? That's really what you got to figure out is what you want to do in order to fulfill you in life. Because if you're not happy in life and what you're doing, it's we're not here that long.
Yeah, you're
It's not
wasting
it's not
time. You're
it's not
wasting.
it's
Yeah,
not a long
exactly.
life. Our days are numbered. You got to figure out what makes you happy, and working doing audits and tax returns, so that I could go travel and be a dad, and that could have been cool too. But I really really love what I'm doing, and so I'm lucky in that way.
Fantastic. Well, I'm happy to hear it, man. And I just wanted to say thank you again for coming on and sharing some of these insights and commenting on some of this stuff. I think it isn't talked about enough. Some really, really invaluable takeaways here. And I think for anyone listening, there's some really, really important things to consider when you're in your 20s. And it's not even age restrictive. You
Yeah,
could be
no,
70 and,
yeah,
there's takeaways here. And I think
mhm,
there are some really, really important things to consider when making decisions, whether in your career, whether in life, that you've brought to the table. And I really appreciate you sharing those with us because I think they're really important and I think they're really applicable, especially in today's landscape.
yeah. I appreciate the opportunity. Like I told you earlier, it's like being able to just sit down and go through, as I was thinking about some of the questions you were going to ask and go through, it's like being able to sit down and reminisce and think about everything that I've done. It was a cool process for me.
Yeah.
Like to
Yeah.
see where
Haven't
I
thought
am
about
now
this stuff in
versus
a
where I
while.
started. It's like, man, this is awesome. It's really awesome. So I thank you for the opportunity.
Well, I'm glad you enjoyed it. I enjoyed it very much. And Matt, thanks so much again. Good luck to you and thanks for joining the Results Loading podcast.
Appreciate it, man.